Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching today's Ag Forecast, brought to you by Agrible, your premier platform for real-time global insights. Well, I know with the drier weather we've had in the Corn Belt, a lot of you are out itching to get the harvest going again, and so I'm going to give you a quick update here if you only have a few moments to watch. Here's the major things I'm going to be talking about in this video. First, we're going to watch the rest of Florence move through the Northeast, putting down quite a bit more precipitation, and we'll talk about its eventual track. Secondly, we have multiple chances this week. Multiple chances over the next 7 days of showers and thunderstorms across the middle part of the country. Heat will be rebounding, and we will see quite a bit of moisture transport out of the Gulf of Mexico. So really starting from Monday, getting us all the way through the end of the week, we're going to have to watch the area I just kind of circled in through here. We will also kind of finish up this video by talking about how we're going to be getting in here toward the end of the third week and beginning of the fourth week of the month of September with the return of a big ridge in the middle part of the country with troughs flanking on either side. And what does that mean in terms of temperatures, and where is that going once we get into the month of October? Is there a pattern shift at all coming? And finally, I'll finish the video with a brief discussion about Brazil and Argentina. So let's start off with Florence. When you look at this map, this shows you the last 72 hours of total accumulated precipitation. And I had to make an adjustment in my map because this is now the 10-inch mark. This used to be the 6-inch color. I made it the 10-inch color so you could see how much rain fell in North and South Carolina. We're going to talk about Florence making this turn right now, coming right into the Appalachian Mountains and going toward the northeast, dropping a whole lot more rain. We did see a very active storm track through the northern plains, getting really into southern Canada, which is why it's really only been Montana, North Dakota, and northern Minnesota that's seen quite a bit of thunderstorm and shower activity toward the end of this past week. It's really been dry across much of the Corn Belt, and that dryness has allowed for the crop to dry down, and a lot of folks have getting that harvest going. A big question is, how long does that last, and where do we start to bring in some precipitation? And finally, just quickly, this is our second big pulse of tropical moisture here as shown in our last 3 days, really just soaking parts of Louisiana and Texas, some regions along the coast here, several inches of rain causing lots and lots of flooding. So I want to show you a little bit about Florence here. Check this out. This image you're looking at here comes from the weather station, the weather forecast office out of Newport, Morehead City, North Carolina. And when you look right here, this is the 30-inch increase in rainfall that they received over the last few days from Florence. So it's clearly the wettest year that they've had on record, almost approaching 80 inches of total accumulated precipitation so far this year. Now, this is a neat map put together by the National Weather Service, and what it shows you is each state how much rain was received by the wettest tropical system or its remnants to ever get into that state. Now pause the video and take a look at your state if you want, but what I want to point out here is that Florence is now the record holder in North Carolina at almost 34 inches of rainfall. Incredible to see those numbers. Okay, one neat thing I'm going to be teaching my students this week about Florence is this cold water trail. Can you see it? You see Florence track, and it took a long time for Florence to do this. Left this cool trail of water behind it, and that's because hurricanes can churn up a lot of cool water from beneath the ocean surface, and they extract a lot of heat from the ocean surface. That's how they work. So a neat thing here to see this cool water trail. Now, what does this mean? Well, when you see this cool water trail following the hurricane, it means that these waters are not going to be conducive for the development of any tropical system that gets into that area. It's just too cool. So that's at least one positive thing right now about the impact that Florence is going to have. But to kind of show you Florence in all of her glory here, here you can see Florence making landfall, certainly much weaker than anticipated about a week ago, and down to a Cat 1, strong Cat 1, Cat 2 storm, made landfall and just repeated rain bands over the same locations in North and South Carolina. Then it started to transition to become post-tropical, got absorbed into the upper level flow eventually here, kind of got sheared apart and looks more like an extratropical system as it gets toward the north and east. So where is it going? Well, I want to animate out for you the NAM model. This is our high-resolution model that's only focused here over North America. It's not great for forecasting hurricanes, but this one has transitioned, and I want to see where it's going to be putting down the heavier rainfall amounts. What you see here is as I get you from late Sunday night through 8 a.m. on Wednesday morning Central Time, we can see that the Appalachian Mountains are going to be experiencing quite a bit of rainfall, some locations over 6 inches. So the flood threat is nowhere near done for parts of North and South Carolina, Virginia, getting into West Virginia, and then eventually Pennsylvania, New York, and far into the Northeast. In the Eastern Corn Belt, look at Kentucky, look at eastern parts of Ohio here and getting into West Virginia and Pennsylvania. Very, very wet couple of days coming up as this moves through. But I think a lot of you in the Midwest are watching this. And what we have to pay attention to here is a couple of things. You'll see throughout the rest of this video, we're going to be talking about this kind of pesky boundary sitting in through this area. That's a front sitting in through that area on which an abundant amount of moisture out of the Gulf of Mexico will be colliding with, giving us multiple chances for showers and storms here, but then stretching out over a much broader area as the week goes on. So we've got quite a bit to be watching, so let's get into this. Florence and the remnants of Florence first. We are hoping that the upper level trough swinging through the Great Lakes is going to grab Florence over the next 48 hours and shove it way out to open ocean. That's the most likely track at this point. But following this trough, if Florence is slow, following this trough, there'll be an area of higher atmospheric pressure, a big dome of it that builds in right in through here. And if that happens, the flow around it will be clockwise, and it could possibly, it's kind of a big if here, grab the remnants of Florence and pull them back toward the south, which may mean it may interact with the East Coast again. But at this point, it appears as though Florence will get grabbed and yanked on off to the north and east. At least that's what we're all hoping for at this stage. By the way, while we were watching Florence, Hong Kong was getting destroyed here by Super Typhoon Mangkhut. It went across the Philippine Islands, doing an enormous amount of damage here, and then it's heading towards Southeast Asia and eventually over toward Hong Kong, doing a lot of damage there as well, as you can see in the video that's over there on the left-hand side. So it wasn't just the Southeast United States that was getting hammered this week. To kind of finish up our discussion on the tropics, I will say this. One good thing is we don't see a lot of tropical convection, big thunderstorms kind of waiting in the wings behind Florence in this section of open ocean. There is a wave coming off of Africa we'll have to be watching, but I'll say this about Isaac. Isaac crossed the Lesser Antilles over the weekend and then moved into the Caribbean, the remnants of which are sitting right here. Now, the Caribbean is often a hostile environment for tropical systems this time of year, but our question will be, can Isaac's remnants get up into the Gulf of Mexico in the coming 4 to 5 days? And if it does, we'll just have to watch it. Maybe some reinvigoration of the remnants of Isaac. But at this point, the National Hurricane Center is giving that a relatively low probability of occurrence. So that's at least what's going to go on in the tropics. Now, tropical moisture is still of great abundance. This animation is going to show you through the next 10 days where we're looking at what are called precipitable water anomalies. Wherever you see the warm colors, that's where the atmosphere has more than normal moisture that can be rained out. Now, I told you the Gulf of Mexico is going to open wide right back up, and here it goes. What you see there across the middle part of the country is repeated pulses of high precipitable water air. And that simply means that the Gulf stays open. We return that moisture to the Midwest, which means it can fuel showers and thunderstorms as we move forward. So what does their timing look like? Well, I'm going to animate out for you the operational European model, okay? We're right now getting it to basically late afternoon on Monday. Now, the big first thing to watch is here goes what's left of Florence up the East Coast. So this is where Ohio gets some rainfall, Kentucky, Tennessee, and West Virginia and Pennsylvania. But there will be a boundary that'll be sitting right in through here on which that moisture will overrun, giving us the chances for showers and storms right in through this area. Now watch as I continue to animate this forward. So again, we're getting into Monday night into Tuesday morning. So there goes the first round. By the time you get into Tuesday, sorry, I went a little faster. This is Tuesday into Wednesday. Look, that boundary reinforces itself. It's now sitting right in through there. That's where the trough at the surface will be sitting. And again, moisture's coming up out of the Gulf. You just saw that. Overruns this and gives us more chances of showers and storms. Let's keep moving forward. We're now Wednesday afternoon. This is getting into Wednesday evening, Wednesday overnight, Thursday morning. By the time we get into Friday, we will see the dominance of this surface high pressure system here that will finally push that front pretty far to the south. So it may be, if you're in parts of Illinois, Indiana, Missouri, you may get until Friday before we see rain coming in through this area. So maybe harvest will continue for another 4 or 5 days in those states. But certainly in this area, not the case. This area will be wet early in the week. But let's keep going and see where this all takes us. Because here we are now on Friday night. And as we move forward, what do we see? We see another pulse of moisture coming out of the Gulf, riding right in through parts of Kansas, Nebraska, Iowa by the time we get into Saturday morning. And then we see that pushing across the eastern Corn Belt into Sunday. I'm not going to take you much beyond that point by using an operational model, simply because there's a lot of disagreement and model consistency has not been very good beyond about day 7. And here's what I mean. When I stretch this out through the next 7 days, this is what the European model says, which is on the left. Storms early in the week here, storms later in the week there, boundary pushes by Friday into this area. The U.S. model, the GFS, has a much more quickly advancing surface high pressure system. Therefore, it's got the rain here early in the week. It's got the rain here middle to end of week, but it tries to keep parts of the eastern Corn Belt dry. Now, the U.S. model's not been the best performer over the last several months. So I'm going to, until it proves me otherwise, until I can also see dynamically why I would want to tell you that it is right, I'm going to default to the European model, which is the one that you see over there on the left. So what does it all mean when you put it together? It means this region, due to that pesky front that's sitting in here, the ridge that sits in this area, and the abundant moisture coming up out of the Gulf, we're going to have to watch again for wet conditions. Am I talking as wet as it was, remember how wet it was, what was that, 10 days ago? No. We're not there again, but it's certainly a lot of moisture to be coming down here at harvest when we're trying to get this crop out. So let's take a look at what the pattern looks like that's doing that. Here we go. As we animate forward, what do we see? Well, the big features are the ones we've been discussing. Ready? A ridge near Alaska, big ridge here. Trough extending from north central Canada into the northwestern part of the United States. Ridge coming right up the gut of the Mississippi River. That's the abundant moisture. And here goes what's left of Florence over here, and it'll eventually kind of travel over toward south of Greenland with time. So that's the pattern. Any shifts in that, well, we'll get rid of the cooler weather in the northwest. We'll get rid of the heat here in the center part of the country, and it'll all start in Alaska. Watch for the ridge, the big ridge over Alaska to break down into a trough. That's what we want to pay attention to. As we go forward, let's check this out. We're now Wednesday of this week. What do we see? Well, we have this system on Friday. Deep enough trough coming in through here that's going to allow that boundary to sag far enough south that it might actually get into parts of Illinois and Indiana and southern Iowa, getting into parts of Missouri as well. So that's what we'll watch. But look, the flow around this upper level ridge brings that heat and moisture right there. As I animate forward, by the time we get into the weekend, well, look what happens. You see, by the time we get into the weekend, we kind of see this reestablishment of what we just saw. Look, ridge over Alaska. And as long as that's there, that tends to produce a ridge right here. So rebounding heat, like we talked about at the very beginning of this video, and reestablishment of the trough off the west coast, trough off the east coast. So if that's the pattern we go into as we get out, this is September 25th, we're 200 hours into the forecast. That may mean the heat we see in the middle part of the country may have some legs to it, may last for quite some time. Let me show you what I mean here. This is an animation of temperature anomalies from the operational European model on Monday. So what do we see? Well, we continue to see the warmer than average conditions through a big section of the Corn Belt. Why cooler in the northern part? Well, the boundary is here. That's the position of the front. And that's the focal point on Tuesday right in through there as the moisture comes up for the showers and storms. Let's keep it going though. As we move forward, what do we see? We see the moisture and the heat returning Wednesday into Thursday into the middle part of the Corn Belt right in through here. And we see our overnight lows staying quite warm. This is early morning on Thursday, 20 degrees warmer than average. Now, by the time we get into Friday, remember I keep telling you that front tries to slide farther south into this area as that bigger area of high pressure moves in north of the Great Lakes. And that's why the warmer than average conditions stay south of that and cooler than average comes in. In fact, we may see toward the end of this week some temperatures in parts of Montana, North Dakota may be creeping toward that freezing mark, which is normal for this time of year. But if we keep moving forward, watch what happens. You know that the ridge reestablishes itself, right? So look, once we get past Sunday into next week, there it goes. Now, what do we see? Trough west, ridge in the central part of the country, trough east. Does this break down? Well, I'll show you this next slide to make sense of that. The long-range European model wants to produce a trough sitting off the Aleutian Islands. If that happens, that shifts the whole pattern to the west, bringing a ridge to the western part of the United States. And a broad elongated trough, see it here? Over the eastern part of the country, centered right in through there. Now, this is a pretty big if, because I've seen this in the last 4 runs. So I watched this all weekend from the European model. But I'll tell you this, the European model keeps trying to do this same pattern at the end of every model run. And we got to wait for them to materialize. So I've got low confidence in this long-range forecast. But this is what the current long-range European model looks like for the very beginning of October. Could be cooler start to the month of October for the Great Lakes in the Northeast, while warmth stays in the Central Plains and West. So that is at least the best guidance we have right now from our long-range models. Let's quickly talk about South America and we'll wrap this one up. We are looking at a map over here on the right showing you soil moisture storage, percent of normal. And I'll just tell you something. Brazil always looks like this at this time of the year. So don't look at this and be concerned. But what this tells me is the monsoonal rains have yet to return. So we'll bring this moisture content back up, but it's going to take about another month for it to really revive. It has been wet when you get down into southern Brazil. So we're talking down here in Paraná, Rio Grande do Sul, getting into Uruguay, Paraguay area, which is right down through here. And we will be seeing that over the next 15 days or so, that same region is picking up on a wetter pattern overall. Now, to finish this up, remember, we are expecting this Mordecai El Nino, which is where it's going to be cool in through this area, but warm north of it. And that tends to produce wet conditions right where I'm putting this X, which a year ago, we were worried about the drought conditions developing there in Argentina, which they most certainly did materialize. So we just want to give you this perspective on South America because we will be watching this very carefully throughout the upcoming growing season for South America, given the potential huge bean crop that we could get out of Brazil this year. And if Argentina doesn't have the drought stresses, well, that could really increase both corn and soybean productions from both countries in South America. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this forecast video. We hope you look forward to our next ag forecast coming out on Thursday morning. Head to agrible.com to learn how you can get real-time agronomic and sustainability insights all at the touch of a button. Look forward to talking to you again Thursday morning.